You don't need to know, you're not part of this family. That's what my father declared, his voice ringing out bold and unmistakable, right in the thick of their 40th wedding anniversary celebration. He aimed those words at my sister. It was one of those chilly, clear nights with twinkling fairy lights draped across the backyard, the sound of hearty chuckles mingling with the smoky aroma of barbecued meat. I was nestled in a quiet corner of the lawn, nursing a soda, my eyes fixed on the one person who never stopped moving, my sister Isabel. She wasn't dolled up in a gown. Instead, she wore a faded button-down shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, her apron smudged with oil as she tended the grill outside. Long before the guests trickled in, she'd arranged the tables, fastened balloons, and even darted after Trevor's little one who'd tried to swipe at the cake. She handled it all as she always did. Meanwhile, Trevor, Lana, and Chris lounged around, sipping wine and chatting as if the party had sprung to life on its own. Mom flitted about, welcoming everyone, tossing out remarks like, "Isabel's so capable," but never once paused to see if Isabel had grabbed a bite herself. No one did anything glaringly cruel, yet something twisted in my gut all the same. Dad Walter rose to his feet, tapping his beer bottle against Mom's glass. "We've got big news," he announced, beaming like a game show host about to reveal a prize. "Next week we're taking the whole family to Hawaii. A true family trip." The backyard burst into excitement. Lana let out a delighted squeal, throwing her arms around her husband. Trevor exchanged a fist bump with Chris. The kids shouted about sandy shores and lava peaks. Even Isabel cracked a small smile, just a fleeting one but genuine. For a moment she looked like she'd finally been let into something. Then in her usual composed way she asked, "What time do we leave? I'll need to adjust my work schedule." It was a simple, practical question, but it hit like a blade. Dad turned to her, his smile vanishing. He stared as if she'd barged into a discussion she didn't belong in. "You don't need to know," he snapped, his tone cutting and absolute. "You're not family." The air turned brittle. "You're staying here to mind the kids. Everyone else is too busy but it just makes sense for you to stay." I went rigid. Mom let out a quick, awkward laugh, brushing it off. Lana nodded absently. Chris averted his gaze. Isabel stood motionless, tongs still in her grip. No one spoke up. No one challenged it. She didn't protest or plead her case. Instead, she placed the tongs on the wooden table, untied her grease-streaked apron, like shedding a weight she'd carried forever, and headed toward the house. Her stride was even, steady, unervingly calm. There was nothing ordinary about how she moved. "Izzy," I called, rising without thinking, but she didn't glance back, didn't hesitate, not even for a second. The screen door closed behind her with a gentle thud, not loud, just decisive. I scanned the yard, waiting for anyone to react, to chase after her. But no one stirred. Trevor was tossing a ball with his kid. Lana giggled with Mom. Dad kept yammering about flight times like nothing had shifted. My sister had just walked out of her own parents' milestone party and no one batted an eye. I slumped onto the porch steps, staring toward the gate like some silent sentinel. The night air was crisp, biting, the kind that seeps under your clothes and makes you tremble, but I wasn't chilled, I was terrified. Terrified because I knew she was gone and this time she wouldn't return. About 30 minutes later, I caught the faint rumble of an engine. Not from our driveway but beyond, slow and deliberate, rolling along the main road that wound past town's edge, where the old bus stop hid beneath a line of maple trees. My pulse quickened. I bolted to the fence, peering through the gaps toward the street. There she was, Isabel, a shadow under the street lamp, a small backpack slung over one shoulder, her beige coat fluttering faintly in the wind. No luggage, no farewell, no one beside her, no one trying to hold her back. I opened my mouth to shout, but my voice caught, trapped in my throat because some part of me understood she'd hit her limit. The kind you don't cross back from, not for shame, not for pleas, not even for affection. I stood there until the bus's taillights vanished down the hill, the engine's hum dissolving into the night. My sister was gone just like that. I slipped back inside hoping someone, Mom, Dad, Trevor, might say her name, wonder where she'd disappeared to. But no, they were still swirling wine in their glasses, debating vacation rentals, arguing over sandals versus trail shoes. Mom even chuckled, good thing Isabel's staying with the kids, it'd be chaos otherwise. Dad nodded, chatting with Uncle Darren as if she'd been wiped from existence. No one asked where she'd gone. No one noted the empty spot by the grill. No one felt the quiet where she'd always been. I climbed the stairs to my room, locked the door and sat in the shadows. No lights, no sound, just the wind slipping through the window frame and my heartbeat thudding like a muted alarm. Everything was different. I grabbed my phone, fingers unsteady, and typed, "Where are you?" But I deleted it. I tried again. I get why you left. I'm not upset. Did you take a warm jacket? I sent it and let the phone drop onto the bed. I didn't expect an answer. I wasn't sure she'd want to hear from anyone linked to the place she'd escaped. But deep down I knew when she stepped through that door, this family had lost the one person who'd held it upright for years. And the void she left was so vast, no one here was sharp enough to see it. That I never learned exactly where Isabel landed. She never spelled it out. No snapshots, no map marker. She only mentioned it was a coastal town, a place with briny air, crashing surf, and not a single person who knew her name. That was it. But even without specifics, I could see it in my mind. I pictured her stepping off a bus just as dawn broke, the wind tugging at her coat, buildings shrouded in fog, the tang of seaweed and fuel swirling around her. For the first time, no one was calling her name to demand help, issue commands, or expect wonders. No one knew she was the eldest, the dependable one, the automatic caretaker. In that town she was just a person, and that, I imagine, felt like liberty tinged with unease. She found a tiny room above a weathered bar, just enough space for a narrow mattress, a fabric closet, and a cracked window overlooking a rusty fire escape. The landlord, a wiry old man with hair like steel wool, didn't pry. He took her cash and handed her a key. Isabel told me she spent a whole afternoon sitting on that mattress, clutching her backpack, staring at the ceiling as if testing whether it was real. This space, hers alone, no approval required, no one watching. The next day she hit the docks hunting for work. In a port town, cafes are everywhere, but scoring a job with no address, no references, and no one to back you up, that's a challenge. She finally got hired at a little place near the shipping yard, where the scent of coffee mixed with fishy stench and engine fumes. The regulars were mostly dockhands and truckers. The owner tossed her an apron and said, "Don't spill it on me and you're fine." She admitted her hands trembled all through her first shift. Orders fumbled, cups slipped, and more than one patron grumbled, but no one labeled her worthless. No one saw her as a burden. That alone kept her pushing forward. That's where she met Ria. Ria was short-haired, quick on her feet, maybe a handful of years older than me. Isabel said Ria never ducked her gaze when she talked, never softened the truth, and, crucially, never felt sorry for her. On Isabel's first day, when she splashed a latte across the counter, Ria didn't scoff or storm off. She tossed her a cloth and said, "Wipe it up, newbie, I'm not tripping over your mess." Blunt perhaps, but real. And for Isabel, real was a treasure. They didn't turn into close pals right away, but Ria was the first to ask, "So, what do you even enjoy?" Isabel faltered, then shrugged. Ria pressed, "Come on, you've got to like something. Pictures maybe." Isabel had just left everything behind, but the question lingered. Days later, walking home after work, she passed a dingy pawn shop. Cloudy windows, clutter stacked like a junkyard. Inside, behind scratched glass, sat a camera, old, battered, likely dead. She stopped. She couldn't say why, but she went in, her hand reaching for it like it belonged to her once. She counted out her crumpled earnings, not quite enough. The shopkeeper grunted, "No battery. Take it, it's trash." No one had ever handed her something without strings, without demands, without motive. She murmured a thank you and left, holding it like it might break. That night she wandered to the docks. The boats groaned, ropes whipped in the breeze, ship lights danced on the waves like shattered stars. She raised the camera, clicked. The shot was probably fuzzy, maybe too dim, but her hand stayed steady. The next day she snapped a fisherman hauling nets at sunrise. 2 gulls battling in the sky, steam rising from a chipped mug on a table. Each photo wasn't just an image. It was a fragment of herself she'd thought was gone. In a place where no one demanded, "Isabel, can you take the kids?" Or, "Isabel, I need you again," she was finally free to just be. And in that stillness she started recalling what living felt like. 2 weeks after Isabel left, our house was like a hive split open. Noisy, frantic, everyone talking over each other. The heat that day stuck to the walls like it refused to let summer go. No wind, no clouds, just the relentless buzz of cicadas and a heavy, suffocating air that made you want to yell. In the living room, Mom Marjorie hunched over a heap of clothes strewn across the couch, her shaky hands folding each shirt. She muttered nonstop, "Where's the sunscreen? The swimsuits? Lana's bag isn't even ready." Her voice was hoarse, worn from sleeplessness, yet still etched like always. Outside, Trevor and Lana bickered by the SUV, stuffing luggage into the trunk. Trevor's shirt clung to his sweaty back, his face red. "I said you don't need heels in Hawaii." Lana yanked the bag from him, her tone sharp as a shard. Says the guy bringing 2 pairs of golf shoes. The kids ran wild, pure mayhem. One smeared sunscreen on another's face, one screeched for a tablet, another tipped soda across the floor. No one took charge, no one watched, because the one who always kept things steady was missing. I perched on the stairs, phone in hand, chin on my knees, trying to block out the racket. I was exhausted by everyone acting like all was well, like Isabel's absence was a small hiccup, like nothing had come undone. Then the phone rang, slicing through me like a snapped cord. I looked up. The name on the screen stopped my breath. Isabel. I didn't pick up. I carried it to the living room where Mom was digging through her purse with a scowl and handed it to Dad. He stood by the dining table, itinerary in hand, paddleboarding, barbecue, helicopter ride. His eyes flicked to the screen. He answered, didn't step away, didn't lower his voice. It carried clear and firm over the hum of the fan. "Come home. Who's going to watch the kids now?" I stiffened. "No, how are you? No, are you safe? No, where are you? Do you need help?" Just an order, flat and icy, like she was a lost tool they couldn't work without. I couldn't hear her reply, but I saw Dad's face change. His shoulders tensed, his mouth tightened, one foot tapped the floor like he was steadying himself. I knew she was talking, and for the first time she wasn't agreeing. She was laying it all out, things this family had ignored or buried. How at 18 she'd ripped up a full-ride college offer because Dad lost his job and Mom needed her to watch me. How in her 20s she worked double shifts to cover Trevor's failed scheme. How every trip Lana bragged about happened because Isabel stayed back with the kids. How some of her birthdays slipped by unnoticed, spent scrubbing dishes while others toasted someone else. I don't know her exact words, but I know it wasn't the voice of someone still craving notice. It was the voice of someone who'd crossed a line she wouldn't retrace. Then Mom snatched the phone, her voice loud and raw. "You ungrateful little wretch. We gave you everything, a home, food, what else do you think we owe you?" My throat clenched, not from the shouting but because I'd once thought like them. I'd believed Isabel had no right to grumble, that her presence was just expected. Until she left and the whole system started to crack. Dad took the phone back, his tone low but piercing. "If you keep up this attitude, don't bother returning." Silence. He hung up, set the phone down. Not slammed, just placed with a quiet finality that hushed the room for a beat. Then the storm picked up again. Mom sank onto the couch, flushed and gasping, gripping her purse so tight the cheap leather split under her nails. Trevor paced, phoning babysitters in a frenzy, snapping, "$300 a day? Are we hiring a queen's nanny?" In the kitchen, Lana kicked a cabinet, muttering through near tears, If Isabel hadn't bolted like a selfish kid, we wouldn't be in this mess. No one said her name with worry. No one asked if she was all right. Every complaint started with, if she hadn't left, as if she'd caused it all, as if they hadn't leaned on her so long they forgot how to stand alone. I slipped quietly to my room and shut the door. No one noticed, no one cared. I sat on my bed's edge, the lamp off, dusk's last glow slanting through the blinds, casting soft gold shadows on the wall. I opened my phone, fingers slow, and typed, "I miss you. It's chaos here." I sent it, set the phone down, didn't expect a response. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. Minutes later, the screen glowed, a short, calm reply that hit harder than any outburst. "I can't come back now." I set the phone aside. The sun had dipped behind the curtains, the room graying, but I didn't flip the light on. The dark wasn't as frightening as the truth I now saw. My sister had patched herself together for years, and this time when the threads snapped, she wasn't returning to fix them. The port city had its own pulse. The deep bellow of ship horns at dawn, waves crashing against the stone barriers, the groan of delivery trucks rumbling over cracked pavement. The air always carried salt, rust, and a faint whiff of motor oil. Wind slipped through every gap in the window frames, every stitch in Isabel's coat. Time flowed slower there, but not in a sluggish way. It beat steady and soft. After her shifts at the dockside cafe, Isabel roamed the streets, her old camera in hand. She didn't snap pictures for anyone, not to impress, not to share, just because with the viewfinder to her eye she could finally see the world her way. It was Ria who nudged her further. One night after closing, Isabel sat in their usual nook, brushing dust off her lens with her sleeve. Ria dropped into the seat across, legs propped on the spare chair, and said offhand, "There's a photography class Wednesdays. Paul runs it. You should go." Isabel blinked. "I hardly know what I'm doing." Ria cracked a sunflower seed between her teeth. "You've got the vision. Skill comes after." Isabel didn't commit, didn't refuse, but the next Wednesday at 6 o'clock she was there. The class met in a repurposed warehouse deep in the Port District. Bare brick walls, tall ceilings, warm string lights dangling like fireflies. A dozen people showed up, each with a unique camera, a unique tale. Paul, the teacher, was slim, wiry, with shoulder-length curls and keen eyes that judged no one. That first night, after reviewing her shots, he said plainly, "You notice what others miss. That's what counts." She never skipped a session after that. She began shooting at dawn and twilight, dockworkers dragging nets, hands rough and dirt-caked, birds slicing through smoky skies, lantern light bouncing off the water. Her photos weren't polished, but they were true, raw, sincere, and Paul took note. One evening he handed her a flyer. "I'm putting on a small student showcase. You should join." She stared. "Me?" He nodded. "You." Isabel had never been picked for anything, only summoned when something needed mending. This time no one needed her. Someone saw her. The exhibit happened on a Saturday night in early October, when the breeze carried a bite and a thin mist kissed the windows along the street. The warehouse was tidied, lights strung beam to beam, folding tables draped with cheap red wine and shortbread. No one wore ties or heels, just folks who wandered in, curious. Friends, neighbors, passers-by. Isabel's photos hung along the west wall, a black and white series. A man tugging a net, a kid perched on a crate, a hard hat tumbling down the pier. Moments no one else caught. People paused to look. A guy in a flannel shirt lingered by the net puller, shot for ages. Not smiling, not nodding, just standing. Then he turned to Paul. "Who made this?" Paul pointed to Isabel. The man approached. "I'd like to buy it. Is it for sale?" Isabel froze. Paul grinned. $50, student rate." The man paid cash, no haggling, no fuss. She clutched the bill like it might vanish. It wasn't a fortune, but for the first time she'd earned something doing what she loved. Not settling a debt, not because someone demanded it, but because something she'd crafted mattered to someone. That night after the crowd thinned, she lingered. The warehouse grew quiet, most lights dimmed, the air tinged with aged wood and faint wine. She took her photos down carefully, packed them into her bag. The last one, her favorite, she held longer. On the back she scrawled with a black pen, "Roots and Wings." Days later she sent me a picture of the gallery wall. One shot, her display, the small white tag beneath, "Roots and Wings" by Isabel Monroe. I stared at it for ages, didn't reply, didn't need to. I got it. She carried her roots lightly, respectfully, and still she'd chosen to soar. That afternoon the sky seemed to hold its breath. Not rain, just a dense gray weight pressing down, the kind that sticks to you and murmurs things you'd rather not hear. The wind rolled in from the docks, sharp with rust, salt, and diesel. Isabel's cafe sat tucked between two aging warehouses, its misty windows glowing soft yellow. Inside it smelled of espresso and spice. Small, modest, but for her the first place that felt hers. She was wiping the counter when the door's bell jingled. She glanced up and there he was, our father Walter. Hair swept back, shirt wrinkled at the elbows, tie loose. He didn't scan the room, his eyes locked on her. Isabel didn't waver. After years of people showing up only when they needed her, she knew this moment before it unfolded. "You should come home," he said, his voice not harsh, just weary. "The family needs you." Those words once held power, once dragged her back every time. Not now, not here in this space she'd carved out without anyone's say-so. She didn't argue or snap. She turned, poured 2 coffees, set one before him. Then from her bag she pulled a stack of printed photos. No fuss, no speech, just the bare truth. "This is what I'm doing now," she said, her tone level, firm like the tide outside. "I'm living where no one pulls me back to clean up their chaos." The pictures lay on the scratched wooden table. An old man hauling nets in the morning haze, hands knotting thick ropes. A child dozing on a crate, sunlight glinting off oily water. Walter looked, didn't touch. Maybe he didn't grasp them. Maybe for once he saw something in her he didn't know. "I'm not the one who fixes things anymore, Dad." There it was, not a jab, just a truth finally voiced after years of quiet. No shouting, no grand exit. He stood, took his still warm coffee, nodded once. Not approval, maybe just recognition that he was too late, that he'd lost his grip. Isabel didn't need a response. She'd already released the question. That night, the night of her exhibit, I wasn't there. I wanted to be. I pictured it 100 times. The lights strung above, the soft hum of strangers drifting between photos, the scent of old timber and budget wine. But I stayed back, not from indifference but because she deserved that spotlight solo. I texted her later after seeing Dad slumped in the living room, still, TV off, eyes far away. "Dad says you've changed." Her reply came fast, simple. "I really have, Nina." 5 words, no flair, no plea, but they lingered because I knew. This wasn't a tweak. It was a quiet uprising. For the first time she wasn't living from duty, guilt, or fear of letting anyone down. She was just living. The last photo in her exhibit was a wave caught right before it crashed. You could see the curl forming, the foam quivering in the light. It wasn't just beautiful, it was fierce, a force rising. Paul, her teacher, called it the strongest piece in the show. But I knew it wasn't just a picture, it was her. Isabel, my sister, who'd borne too much for too long, who finally chose to live like that wave. Unapologetic, bold, done seeking approval. A month after the showcase, Isabel was asked to talk about her photo series at a small local photography forum. She nearly declined. She'd never seen herself as someone who took a stage. But Ria said, "You don't need to speak pretty. Just speak true." That night I went, slipping into a back row seat, a small bouquet wrapped in newspaper on my lap. The room was cozy, warm yellow lights, wooden chairs packed close. A screen up front flashing each image from Roots and Wings. I'd studied them on my phone, but here they shimmered. More vivid, more alive. Isabel stepped forward. No notes, no mic adjustments. just looked out at the crowd with eyes that had spent years gazing at people who never truly saw her back. "I spent most of my life thinking I was meant to hold things together," she said, her voice soft but solid, "to be the glue for all the cracked parts. But no one showed me how to keep myself whole. I didn't notice I was crying until the warmth hit my cheek." When she finished with, "I don't deny my roots, I just chose to grow wings," I stood, hands shaking, and walked to her as the room clapped. I handed her the flowers, hugged her tight, whispered just for her, "You really did fly, sis."